Hi, I'm Emilia.
And I'm Yvonne. Together, we wrote a book on female friendships, and boy, do we have questions.
We're here to continue the conversation and help women to navigate, cultivate, and celebrate female friendships.
This is Girl Friendships.
Hey, ladies. Thank you so much for watching the first season of Girl Friendships. We've had a lot of great conversations and we're looking forward to coming back to you soon. Just know this hiatus will be very short and we'll see you guys in the fall. Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it.
I'm starting out laughing with nervous laughter because we're all sitting here and we're going to talk about this topic that none of us, if you thought the last episode was bad on us, this one is harder because it's breakups. It's when do you know it's time to break up a friendship, you know? And in the last episode, I ended up with a song that talks about breaking up is hard to do. I don't think we come at breakups with our girl friendships. Oh, they're never easy. We don't come at it with any degree of comfort. We don't take pleasure in it. But sometimes it's what we have to do to preserve our own sanity. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about breakups today because life is way too short to have one person that we're giving so much control over to make our lives miserable. And so how do you know, when do you know it's time? You've gotten to that point in your friendship where you kind of go, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I just cannot. And I don't care if we have history or long history and we have seasons when we were good, but I can't do it. It's time to cut ties. So Jess, jump right in and tell us, because I'm stressed already.
Yeah. Well, sorry in advance, because the story might make you more stressed, but I experienced friendship breakup with a friend that I've known since diapers. We had 25 years of what I would consider solid friendships, and then my 25th birthday was the beginning of the end. I'm not going to get into all the specifics because obviously people who listen to this know who she is if you know me, but it all devolved as a result of a guy.
A man?
Which is not surprising, but surprising considering how our friendship was, because men were not the center of our lives. Men were never the center of our lives. We had a lot of things going for us. You know, you would think that this would be different. What made it worse for me was that this was a friend of someone that I was in a relationship with. So they knew that person very well. So with the understanding that they know a version of me that was with somebody else. It's different, right? I knew things that she wouldn't have known about this guy beforehand, but I thought, you know, he's making an effort, he seems different, she's in a good headspace when she's around him, so it seemed. I thought things were okay. Unfortunately, she decided because, you know, I was cool with it, that she thought that I was cool with everything that she did. That was not the case. And I'm tiptoeing around it because it's literally such a specific situation, there's only one person that would know. And even with what I've provided, it's still a lot. But essentially, she disrespected my safe space. I don't play about my apartment. I never play about my apartment. And it's been now 3 years since that incident happened almost. And I still have not let people in my space in the same way because of that. Because it's like a 25-year friendship is a long time to just throw something away over someone that was not even treating you with halfway respect. Based on everything we know now. And my problem was never with the guy because he was always just going to be a terrible person. My problem was that you knew all these things because it was to a point where after the space was disrespected, 4 or 5 months go by, no conversation, no acknowledgement, no, hey, you know, that was a crazy situation, I'm going to take my space, I'm so sorry, but I need to figure things out. It was just, I'm just going to leave her alone because she'll be fine eventually. Yeah. And then upon returning to try and have conversations, she tried to act like nothing happened. That's too big of a thing to just sweep under the rug. The rug is full. And
so do you mind if I just ask a question? So as I'm listening to your story, and that probably will be true for many of us going through the same thing, it's an accumulation. Remember we talked about in the last episode, the person has done a bunch of things. Because I'm thinking something has to be really drastic for one incident to make you throw away your girl friendship, especially when you've had that many years of longevity invested in it. Yeah. So it probably is an accumulation of little slights or little disrespect. Do you think?
No.
There was a defining moment?
That was the defining moment. Because if there was a line, and let's say people cross lines all the time, right?
Right.
She took a bus and drove it at 100 kilometers an hour past that line. That's what she did when the first thing happened, and I was already like, I'm confused. Because this isn't the person that I know. This is not the person that I grew up with. This is not the person who, when I had conflicts or relationships with men, that this would be the opposite of the advice that you give to me.
Right,
so,
right.
Knowing all of that and how deeply entrenched our friendship was to the point where our lives were essentially linked and we don't live in the same city. To go and do that and then expect me to just be okay with it and keep rolling like everything's fine? Absolutely not. The friendship was always going to change as a result of that one incident. Because if we were close and locked in before, now I'm going to keep you at arm's length at least, because I can't trust you around men. I'm a girl. I'm not a big fighter. I can fight if I have to, but I shouldn't have to feel like I'm unsafe in my own house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was a
principle,
a value boundary
there's
that
certain
got
things
crossed.
that you can do that, you know, even at the time I was thinking this is just going to be a conflict for a season. We're going to get through this, but she's not coming back to my house. That's all I knew at that time, right? But then at the lack of acknowledgement of the situation, then 4 or 5 months later, finding out more details that added more turmoil to her relationship, it turns out, you know, she still decided, oh man, I really messed things up. So instead of saying, I really messed up, please forgive me, I'll, you know, whatever it is, I just need the acknowledgement. If I had gotten that acknowledgement, a lot of things would have been different right now. I can't say that we'd still be friends, but a lot of things would be different right now in terms of my opinion of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a result of that, I was like, okay, well, if you're cool off of me, I'm going to be cool off of you. But I can be cool off of you so much more because I already have a life and, you know, established things. And so many things went up in my life after that friendship left.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So that's how I knew that this was the time that it was going to be, because everything else just started getting better as a result of that breakup. I mourned it. I cried up until last year. But I got asked literally 2 months ago, hey, do you still talk to this person? And I said, no, there's no reason for us to talk. We don't have anything now that would be in common except for things that I share on my public social profiles. You're not that close of a friend to me if you only know my life through my social media.
Yeah.
Because what you see on social media versus what I've been through this year, two very different things.
Right.
So that friend who I was talking with, who asked me the question about the friend that I broke up with, they were like, oh, like, I'm surprised. Like, I thought you guys would have figured things out by now. I'm like, well, the ball has been in her court for 2 years.
Yeah.
And if after 2 years you still decide that I'm not going to address it, I'm not going to mention anything, I'm just going to leave it alone, and maybe she'll come back eventually, I'm too old to be doing that. It's not enough time, space, or energy that's going to make me be able to go back to being the same friend that I was to that person.
And what it sounds like to me is that what it really comes down to is a difference of values, right? It sounds to me like it's so important for you, for someone to acknowledge what they did wrong, to take responsibility, to apologize. And so if that person's not doing that, then what's happening is you're seeing that you have a difference in values, right? Because there's something like really core that you believe about, you know, how relationships should work and what's important to you in a friendship that's just not aligning. So it's not even like, oh, you know, well, I have my pride or something. It's like you're seeing something about a person that's demonstrating to you that their values just don't align with yours.
Yeah, and the thing that kept me going through the initial conflict was that if if things were switched around and I did what she did to me to her, she would be more upset than I was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's how I know that you know that this is not okay. You know that this whole situation was messed up. And you apologize for the initial incident, but your energy immediately following that and the lack of conversation, the lack of communication, we were not on the same page. Ever.
Yeah.
And
So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm trying to be clinically detached and just hear the words for what they're saying, for what you're saying. And I'm thinking, if I was that friend, playing devil's advocate, if I was that friend, and I'm thinking, well, I apologized at the time, but there was an expectation of more from
because
you.
I could have forgiven. I could have moved past the first incident. We would not be the same friends. But I could have at least, if that was it,
Yeah.
we might still have conversations to this day. I can't say that we'd be close, but we might still at least be able to.
So there's a line that gets crossed,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't even have to be a line that is discussed,
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, intrinsically in yourself that a line got crossed, and you know what? I am not going to do the patchwork. I am not going to whatever, because it's making me look at you differently.
Yeah.
Because in that circumstance, there was absolutely nothing that I did wrong. Nothing that I did in that situation would have changed the outcome of those events. Everything was directly related to how she moves and how she acted. And I'm like, you know how I feel about my space. There are family members that don't know my address. But this is someone who is close to someone that I'm no longer associated with. And you brought them into my house.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to overstay.
And so I think the other thing to add here is, you know, we all have different values and expectations and needs for our friendships, but I think something that's core is that you need to be able to trust the other person. And
When trust gets broken.
yeah, when trust gets broken. And so, you know, when we're talking about, okay, well, you're not looking at that person the same way, right? Or you're not going to treat them the same way after this kind of situation. It's because you no longer trust them. So if you don't trust them, you're not going to let them back into your house. So there are kind of repercussions to that. And as I'm saying this, I do wonder if there are people who don't necessarily need to have friends that they trust because they just have, you know, values around other things that are important in friendship. But I would say that probably for at least a large majority of us, trust is just so fundamental. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the Breaking Up chapter of the book, is that one of the questions that you should ask yourself is, you know, can you trust this person again? Because that's what it comes down to, right? And some people might say, no, I can't trust this person again, but that's okay. I'll keep them at arm's length and I'll still consider them my friend and I'll still keep in touch. And maybe that's, you know, that's okay based on their values or what they want out of a friendship. But if, you know, one of your core needs in a friendship is trust, then I can see how kind of, you know, what we call the defining moment can break a 25-year friendship because, you know, you just no longer trust that person and they've done nothing to regain that trust. So, you know, as you were saying about like acknowledging, apologizing, that would start to rebuild a little bit of trust, right? If that person can see where they went wrong, that person can show you that, you know, that sort of situation would never happen again. That starts to rebuild the trust between you. But if that person hasn't done that, then and you know, and you need trust for a friendship, well, then it's over, right?
Right. Because once that trust was broken, it's not like I can just go away for a couple of months and then come back.
Right.
We built 25 years of trust that got broken in one night.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of
So
trust.
that's when you know it's gone deep, because it's not just a little thing. It's violated like a sacred value.
Yeah. And what I'm asking myself too is, we're talking about a person in their mid 20s, right? And I ask myself, is this something where maybe she'll act a way that she wouldn't act like in 10 years or 20 years, with kind of the hindsight of life and understanding, who she wants to be and how she wants. So I don't know, that tends to be like where my mind goes. But at the same time, I do think that unfortunately, one of the things that I've learned is that, yeah, people don't change that much. They really don't. And that's both good and bad, right? I met up with a friend this year that I hadn't seen like at least a good 10 years. Actually, I think a little bit more. And we talked and caught up and we had so much fun and just, like I could tell that we still share the same values and the same things. And so, yeah, it's interesting. So both for better or for worse, I don't find people change that much, but yeah.
Yeah. So then, you're in some cases, the friendship breakup will come because a thing happened, and that thing was a defining moment. It was a draw the line in the sand. You crossed this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this to me, and you can't come back from it. Like it's just next to impossible. But then there's the drip over time,
accumulation,
kind of thing. So that there's no defining moment that you say this, but after a while. Think for me, with one friendship I might have mentioned, and it wasn't like a breakup, but I severed. I walked away because it was one-sided. So it was like, I'm the one holding up this friendship. So am I calling that a breakup? I don't know. But I literally, at some point, I made a decision that no more.
Yeah.
I am not holding up my side because let me see if let me test, because the person said, no, what do you mean? Why would you want to say that? But when I let go, it died.
Yeah.
So sometimes your breakups could come through that gradual drip over time. Or if, every time you're in that, and this friend was not like that, we had good times when we were together, but I really was the one investing most of the time in the relationship, and it's okay. That's fine. My life is not significantly impacted as a result of the person not being there. But there are the people who you might have been around them for years, from childhood even, or for how many years you've known them. But every time you're in that person's presence, you feel less than your best self. You had some good questions in this chapter, Emilia, for us to ask ourselves about our friendships if we're thinking it's time to go. Because if every time I'm around you and I feel less than, and I feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm not appreciated, I'm not loved, I'm not whatever, because in order for you to feel good, I have to feel bad, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And me for putting up with it. So here's some questions to consider. How do you feel when you're in this person's company, your friend's company? Do you mostly feel good around her? Mostly. It's a good word. Do you trust her, which is what you were asking just a while ago. If you trust her, why or why not if you don't? Do you feel appreciated by this person? Do you feel respected? Do you feel valued? Do you feel understood? Do you feel that she's receptive to what you need? Do you feel as though your friendship is usually equal in effort? Does this friendship have a positive effect on your well-being? Those are all really, really good questions, because over time, if I'm spending a significant portion of my time, investing my time with you, and most of it end up with me feeling less than, something is wrong with me, I think, for putting up with that, like my self-value. But I think at some point you may just want to say, grow up, Yvonne, go find another friend. But we talk about in the book, sometimes half a loaf is better than no bread. And sometimes we put up with bad behavior because we think nobody else will like us or want us to even be around. So we put up with yuck, right?
Yeah.
Because at least when we're around this yuck, we feel needed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And I think too, kind of going back to the specific questions, some of these things may be more important to you. Some of these questions that I ask may be less important to you. So that can be something to reflect on even before you try to answer those questions about a person. Because you'll say to yourself, well, maybe I don't need to feel understood. Like, she's a flamingo, I'm a frog. We're so different, and she doesn't always have to understand me. Like I have a friend in mind as I say this, and it's like I baffle her because just our personalities are so different, but that's not what's important in our friendship. Like for her to necessarily understand why I think the way that I do or why I operate the way that I do. So I think that's something to reflect on with the questions. First, it's like, okay, which of these things are really important to me? Which of these things are just non-negotiables that I can't live without a friendship? I don't want to live within a friendship. And then reflect on that friendship and say, does this person, can I answer positively about this person when it comes to these questions of things that are really important to me.
Yeah. And sometimes people, they wound us without even a full knowledge of how they're wounded.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm thinking keep going back to it. The more we let things sit and brew and don't deal with it, it could be that the person doesn't know. Or the person may know, but they think, oh, you've behaved this way in the past. Like in Jess's example, you've behaved this way in the past. You've always, come around. So why would I expect you not to behave differently?
Yeah.
This time? Because that's what you usually do. But, there comes a time when you kind of have to say, no. I'm committed to being your friend, but these are my expectations of our friendship. And if it wasn't articulated before, I'm going to articulate it now, because I life is too short. And many of us can't have that conversation or not willing to have a conversation with our friends. So we kind of pull back, or we put up boundaries, or we say this far and no further. And sometimes we have to cut them out completely.
Yeah.
Out of our lives.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of it too, like to your point about people not feeling like they're superior in their friendships and things of that nature. I have friends that I love to the end of this earth, and I might do some illegal things for them because I know that it's the same thing on their side, right? But those are people that I trust with my life. I would leave them in my house, doors unlocked, everything, no problem, and I know that it would come back exactly the same way that I found it. But there are certain things that friendships deal with and stuff like that, where even I noticed within that breakup friendship, that other friends were like, you don't tolerate this in any other circumstance, why would you be okay with it here? And I was like, we've been friends for so long, this is just who she is, I'm okay to accept her for where she's at, until she crossed a line where I was like, no, I love myself too much to let this be
a
continual thing in my friendship, because a lot of people find that they're like, well, I'm never going to find another friend again. I've met so many friends. I have a rich group of tapestry of friends, and it's because I decided to go and do things for myself that maybe my other friends are not interested in, aren't willing to do, couldn't make it, what have you. But until you love yourself enough to just be by yourself, you're not going to be able to be in a relationship, because
so let not fear drive you to stay in something that's not building you up.
You have to love yourself enough to say enough's enough.
Yeah.
And the next episode, I see a natural progression. We will talk about making new friends, but before we leave the subject of breaking up, there's a mourning that has to go with. 25 years is a long time. And for my friend, I still talk about it with a degree of nostalgia, because I'm going, why wasn't in my head? Why wasn't I enough for you to invest the time? There's a what you call it? A soft pain. It's not a hard pain. It's a soft pain that we think on some level that people that we've invested in should feel that way about us, and when they fail, and they fail to live up to our expectations, some of which we did not even know we had.
Yeah.
Then we have to take time, or we should take time to mourn the loss. So in the book, Emilia wrote about releasing negative emotions. Only Emilia would come up with terms like these. It's not it's not how I talk, but I remember when I read this chapter that she'd written, and I'm going, okay, then I know where she's going with this. Now I am prepared to say, okay, here are some steps that you can take to release those negative emotions. So buy a copy of the book if you haven't already. But we talked about acknowledging, we talked about writing a letter to the person, whether or not you actually meant it, because it's part of the mourning, the grieving, the acknowledging. Write it out. Get it out of your system. Because the more you stew on it and don't air it, the more it's going to come back to
just keep circling inside of you.
So acknowledging why you're writing the letter. So you're going to personalize it. So let's say, dear Emilia, let's say you were the person. You may never read these words I'm about to write, but now that I have a little more time to get some perspective, I want to fully express how I feel about what transpired between us. Okay? So that's part of it, acknowledging why you're writing the letter. Remember, this is a letter you may never send.
And in some cases, shouldn't.
But
Depending on how...
it's a way of mourning.
Yes.
It's a way of getting the stuff out. Now, the second piece you want to do is describe what the person did and how it made you feel, right? So an example would be, I'm really pissed off at you right now. More than that, however, I am hurt, disappointed, frustrated, and upset with myself. I'm mad at myself for giving you so much power to hurt me. Angry for putting up with your selfishness over the years, hoping for change, and being naive enough to believe your promises to do better. Ouch! So that's why you probably won't ever send this letter. But you never know. Then the next step would be to describe your next step. What do you want? Right? So an example would be, I have finally gotten some sense. Enough already. I need and deserve people in my life who will uplift me, support me, and love me, not only for what I can give them, but for who I am. I want a friend who will put my needs above her own, not for what she can get in return, but because she sincerely wants what's best for me. You were never that friend. So I'm letting you go. One day I might look back on this experience and be thankful, but right now, it's time for me to get on with my life without you.
Yeah.
How do you feel even as you're hearing these words? What if they were written by you or addressed by you? Remember, this is a letter you may never send.
Yeah. And I did want to say, actually, that I have written the breaking up chapter, but I do believe the example letter was on, that you wrote. And then I softened it. I went ahead and softened it because there were some strong feelings in there. There were some really strong feelings in there. But, you talk about sort of grieving the friendship, mourning the loss of it. And I think it's really important. And in my experience, like I've been through some really tough friendship breakups. Literally, it didn't feel too different than like a romantic relationship breaking up. And even in the length of time it took me to like get over it, similar to in the past getting over romantic relationships. So, I mean, Yeah, this is really hard. This is
hard. And acknowledge that it's hard, and it may take you a while. You know, one person I was speaking to just last month, she said, interestingly, that you've started this episode on female friendships because I'm going through, it feels like a friendship breakup, and it's been a friend I've known for many, many years. And she said, the term she used, she said, it feels like a divorce.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you do write the letter, you can read the letter to an empty chair. Just pretend the person is there. And afterwards, you can either burn it or keep it as a reminder. The whole point is for you to get all the angst out, right? Keep the letter as a reminder so you're not tempted to return to the friendship. Breaking up with a friend is hard, but sometimes it is what you must do to preserve your peace and happiness, especially after trying other options.
Yeah.
So when you get to this point when you kind of go, I've done this, tried this, whatever, or this was so big or so epically wrong that I don't even know that I know you. I can't go back.
Yeah.
But it's still, at the end of the day, it's coming to terms with the death of something. And that hurts.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is this chapter took me so long, not just to write, because I think I wrote it and then I just kept coming back to it. And one of the reasons...
You talked about forgiveness in here too. Right?
Yeah. And, you know, one of the reasons why it took me so long and I kept revisiting this chapter and trying to finish it and really bring it to completion is because at the time that I was writing it, I was considering a friendship breakup. And I just thought to myself, and like I didn't think this consciously, but I think subconsciously, I couldn't close the chapter without coming to a conclusion about that friendship, because in a way that friendship embodied this whole chapter, right? All these things that I was thinking about, these questions that I was asking myself. And so I closed the chapter, unfortunately, the friendship too. And but it was spinning in my head for so long because I was asking myself these same questions that I suggest for other people.
Right. So, I mean, in summary, I guess we could say most of us, let me go on the limb and say, very few of us are going to make a decision to break up with a girlfriend of long standing unless it takes, something has brought us here. And we are at the point where we're thinking, I just can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And just spend time to just acknowledge the journey, and maybe at some point when we're not so sore or grieving or whatever, we can look back and say, well, maybe that person was just in my life for a season.
Yeah.
And seasons change, we change. Maybe what I put up with at 16 or 18 at my 26th year or my 55th year or 97th year, I don't do it because, you're probably looking at life differently and say, I need people with a different energy in my life. And sometimes we might have to let go of some people. We will always have history together, but maybe not a future.
Yeah, definitely. And I know for me, as you mentioned, I talked about forgiveness in the chapter, and I feel as though I'm so forgiving in my friendships and my relationships. But once I've decided to end a relationship, I have a really hard time letting go of that hurt and kind of forgiving something that's ended, right? That has, because it's easier for me to forgive when there's kind of a continuation, right? Because now you have new memories with that person and new experiences and, new ways to rebuild each other's trust. But like once something has ended, like letting go of that hurt, that's a chapter for a future book that we write, because I just haven't come to the conclusion yet entirely. Like I have in some places like been able to kind of forget, like, that emotional charge of that hurt has gone way down. but it's, oh man, like, I don't know if it's because I'm a Scorpio or what, but it's like so hard to let go of things that have just ended, right?
Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, it's a thing. It's
As a fellow water sign, I can help you. Because I feel the same way. Like, no matter how long it's been since the conflict, I can remember the exact emotions I had at that time and stuff like that. Like, obviously, as time passes, the hurt becomes less. But I'm more so in the camp of, I can forgive someone, but I'll never forget what you did. I and that doesn't mean, my brand of forgiveness doesn't mean that you have access to me the same way that you did before.
yeah.
Because once you cross uncrossable boundaries in my head, there is no salvaging this. But if it's a small boundary, you know, you just did something I don't like, you can't do that again with me. But if you continue, then
Yeah.
And I'm conflicted on this. I am so conflicted because the Christian in me says we should forgive. I mean, I also know, the logical, rational part of me knows that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean I forget, because I'm stupid. If you you abuse me or whatever, and I'm just gonna go, la la la, that never happened, fool on me. But I'm always hopeful that there could be reparation. I'm always hopeful, not that I will go seeking after it, because, you know, we're talking about hurt and hurt feelings. And if every time, if I'm going to open myself up to restoring that friendship, it means we both have to sit down and acknowledge all the things that went wrong in the friendship, and the perpetrator, whoever the guilty party is, has to be saying, oh my gosh, look how much damage I have done to you. I wasn't even thinking, or even if I was thinking, I was in a stupid place, and I am prepared now to do whatever it takes, because you are that important to me to do that. And I am hopeful that I might, for some people, be able to extend the olive branch again. But for others, because if I'm the guilty party, I cannot demand, and I've betrayed you, I cannot demand that you forgive me. I have no right to demand it. It's grace you could extend to me to say, I'm prepared to do this. But when trust is broken, and with our girlfriends, it's a little bit tricky, because we didn't have any kind of contract or agreement, so we don't even know
No
what
rules
to
written
do.
out.
Yes.
Yeah,
We don't even know when those intrinsic things happen that breaks our trust, and we walk away, but we're still walking away wounded.
yeah.
And so I don't know. Do we ever come to terms with it? Do we sit down and put up with it? Or do we walk away, we're still... But at the end of the day, to me, I'd rather be at peace than to be in a relationship that's causing me grief.
Yeah.
So I will always opt for peace.
And I think
For
there's
myself,
I think there's a difference too between extending your forgiveness and extending your friendship, right? So for you, Jess, like, you might in your if you find a way to do this as a water sign to get to a place of peace around your friendship, around what happened, you know, even getting to a place where you can remember the good things about it and you can appreciate the good things about it. So you can get that and extend that forgiveness, like, mentally and through your heart, but not necessarily extend that forgiveness as, you know, a text or a phone call,
right?
Or, you know, because the way that I see it, and I think this is a hard lesson that I've learned as someone who's been, like, very forgiving in my friendships, is you don't let the lion back in your house, you know?
Yeah.
And when you realize, like,
But
that the
the
sheep was
lion
the
now looks
lion.
like a sheep.
Yeah. Well, it's
Maybe
like...
they've changed.
It's like well, that's exactly it, right? And you know, sometimes you give people second chances, and then you're like, oh crap, no, that was just a really good outfit. that made you really look like a sheep.
Why was
You're
I
still a lion, and I
Yes.
can't let you back in my house,
'Cause I will
right?
say, like, reading the female friendship guidebook, and especially the chapter on friendship breakups, was part of my healing process because, like, now I can talk about, like, things that we had, like, memories that we shared and stuff like that. It's not like it was terrible all 25 years. That would be crazy. I
Yeah.
think my mom would have to step in at that point. But, you know, it helps me to be like, okay, well, I don't think I'm interested in having this person in my life going forward. And me and my friends have this thing where, like, if they're moving a little strange, then we'll call them by a name that's not their name. Or not a name they go by, depending on, like, how many names they have. And so, you know, I meant the person by one name. Now they're going by a different name. And that person is not a person that I want to be associated with. And that's okay. Because I still had good memories with the first name.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that made things a little bit easier for me to be able to reconcile with, like, what happened versus what is happening now. And I don't, like, if I see her, it's nothing, it's no ill will towards her. I have ill will towards the situation.
Yeah.
But I don't have any ill will towards her. It's just
Yeah,
that
that's
I know
when you
that we're
know
not
you've
in the
moved
same
to a good
space.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congrats. Congrats. I'm sure that was hard
It was a
to
lot
get
of
to
work,
that place.
and I
Yeah.
watched from this side as you know how much it hurt her. But
Yeah.
Yeah. it
and
does
because
feel like
I'm the
it was.
perpetual peacemaker, I'm going, yeah, sure, it cannot be restored.
Yeah,
Yes. Mom.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going. I got the mom. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're in that space where you're thinking, is it that time to write that letter which you will never mail? You know, go into it eyes wide open. Protect your peace. Protect your self-worth. And yeah, know that you deserve better.
You've been listening to the Girl Friendships Podcast with Yvonne and
Emilia, thanks for listening. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
leave a comment, please, to let us know your thoughts.
And come back next time for another episode of Girl Friendships.